He is the absolute ruler of the continent, but abandons all the power to find the reincarnation of his lover in a world of magic. The wind howls across a snowfield littered with blades thrust into frozen earth. A single man stands at the center of it all, breathing hard. Around him, bodies lie still beneath the drifting white. He exhales a long, ragged breath. He wonders whether they have all been annihilated. His inner power is gone. He understands that this may be the end. He says quietly that they should simply kill him now. A sharp crack splits the air behind him. A figure descends through the snowstorm with an unmistakable presence. He is the Northern Sea Palace Master. He asks the fallen man why he would kill her. The fallen man chuckles, then says plainly that the leader's daughter was playing love games with a barbarian like him. Letting her live would have been the greater mistake. The Northern Sea Palace Master goes silent. Then a sharp burst of ice-cold energy flares in his hand. The fallen man speaks again, almost amused. He acknowledges that Jiangnan has fallen, but the thing the Northern Sea Palace Master most wanted will never be obtained. A beam of force tears through the air and pierces him. The fallen man convulses with the impact, and in the last flicker of his fading awareness, a name surfaces, Hwayeon. With his last shred of consciousness, he wonders why she would betray her father and associate with that barbarian. In his final moments, he feels immense anger and resentment. That night, with the death of the Murim Alliance leader Dam Chunhak, the 6-year-long Great Blood Battle came to an end. The living legend of the Northern Sea, the Northern Sea Palace Master Seol Mudok, becomes in the same moment the uncontested ruler of the Central Plains. He shows no emotion. He simply gazes at the moon calmly as the snow continues to fall. A crescent moon hangs above tiled rooftops. Inside a quiet hall, a single red flower sits in a white vase, vivid against the stillness of the room. Seol Mudok sits before it and thinks in silence that all that is left for him is this flower. He recollects a memory. A voice calls out to him and he turns towards. A young woman rushes in carrying the vase, eyes wide. He asks what the matter is. She tells him to look and announces that the Lotus of Love has finally bloomed. He asks in amazement if it was the flower that only blooms when two lovers truly love each other. She says that yes, that is exactly right. She tells him with a teary expression that she had never doubted his feeling. Although she was so upset that the Lotus of Love would not bloom, now it has bloomed so beautifully. It was not just her one-sided love, that he also truly loves her. He wraps his arms around her and whispers reassuringly that who else would he love but her. He thinks to himself how grateful he is for the flower and to see her so happy. The memory fades away and he is alone again, holding the Lotus of Love in his hands. After a pause, he thinks he should fill the entire garden with Lotus of Love flowers. For her, he says to himself, while staring at the flower, that no matter how hard he tries, he cannot forget her. Suddenly, it blooms again. His body goes stiff. He asks, barely forming the words, whether the Lotus of Love has bloomed again and how this is possible. Then sharply, he calls out Hwayeon. A subordinate appears instantly. Seol Mudok's voice drops to something controlled and absolute. He tells Hwayeon to find someone who can explain what just happened before his eyes, even if it means searching the entire Central Plain. Hwayeon answers and leaves immediately. A few days later, the chirping of birds fills the sky above the Northern Sea Ice Palace. Word has gone out, and the Manbakja, those said to know everything in the world, have gathered at the palace gates, murmuring among themselves, asking what on earth the Northern Sea Divine Palace could possibly want with them. A voice comes from the air itself, commanding them to come forth. They are startled and ask among themselves, a voice from the sky. They exchange glances and wonder how they are supposed to respond to that. Someone says they might as well just go and see. They enter the garden, and one of them stops walking entirely. His voice cracks and he says it is amazing. Wind moves gently through the space, and before them stretches a garden filled with Lotus of Love flowers burning orange and red in every direction. One of the men says it is the first time he has ever seen a garden filled with the Lotus of Love, that it is a flower you might go your entire life without seeing even once. He leans close to a single stem and reads aloud the character inscribed there, Love, as if embroidered into the plant itself. He says it is undoubtedly the Lotus of Love. He cannot understand how there could be so many of such a rare flower. Then Seol Mudok steps forward from among the blooms, white-haired and unhurried, and asks them simply whether they like the flowers. One of the men begins to answer and say that they like them. Before he can continue, the older man asks, with sudden wariness, who Seol Mudok actually is. Seol Mudok tells him that he is the owner of this garden. The man goes pale. He stammers calling his name and asking why the absolute ruler of the Central Plains was here before him in this garden. Seol Mudok speaks without preamble. He tells them that as they can see, this garden is filled with the lotus of love that is lover, and he made it bloom with their love. But when his lover died, the flower also died. However, for some reason, it was revived a few days ago. The men react. One asks whether it truly revived. He confirms that he saw it with his own eyes. A murmur moves through the group. One man calls it a strange phenomenon. Another agrees, a mystery indeed. Then, after a moment of thought, one of the older men says that though it is strange, there is one possibility. Seol Mudok fixes his gaze on the man and asks what it is. The elder says that for one to be reborn in a new body. In other words, reincarnation. It seems the deceased lover of the palace master has reincarnated somewhere in this world. Seol Mudok asks with an even menacing gaze whether that is really true. The elder says with fear that if it is not, there is no other explanation for the lotus of love to bloom again. Reincarnation, Seol Mudok repeats. His mood shifts, and with a hopeful expression he says that there is finally hope. He thinks of what he has accomplished. He entered the Central Plains and unified the entire region, fulfilling the long-cherished wish of the Northern Sea. But all that is left for him now is emptiness. As the Northern Sea prospers, his longing for Hwayeon only grows. He lost her and could not find a purpose to continue living. He looks at the elder and asks plainly how they can find her. He tells them to explain quickly. The elder says it is said that the lotus of love glows faintly when the two lovers are in the same place. When the palace master finds his lover, the lotus of love will glow. Seol Mudok considers this. He recalls that the lotus of love Hwayeon brought was glowing. He did not think much of it at the time, but it must have held such a secret. The elder continues saying that carrying he suggests crafting the lotus of love into a jewel to carry. Seol Mudok asks whether that is possible. The elder says it is. Then Seol Mudok gives his instructions. He says he will entrust all the preparations to them, and for them to be ready in 10 days for their departure. The elder answers that he understands. Seol Mudok adds, almost as an afterthought, that if everything goes well, he will reward each of the manbaekja with 100 nyang of gold. One of the men reacts with pure disbelief at the mention of 100 nyang of gold, and the older man asks whether he is serious. Seol Mudok says he will get going now and turns. The sound of his footsteps fades down the path. The men call after him, telling him to take care. He thinks to himself as he steps into his room that he had believed he would never see it again, but now he has hope once more. He affirms that he would not let go of this hope he now has, and he would follow after her no matter where she is, even if it's hell. He tells her, in the silence of his own chest, to wait for him. A roaring fills the open sea. The ship cuts through churning waves, listing hard to one side as white water sprays across the deck. A shadowed figure stands at the bow and mutters to himself grimly that it is not here, and that all that remains must be Hainan. He stands alone by candlelight, silver hair half-shadowing his face. It's our man Seol Mudok. He has been searching for her for 3 years and 5 months and has found nothing, not a single trace of her anywhere across the Central Plain. During that time, his cultivation has climbed from the transformation realm all the way to the profound realm, and he has experienced complete metamorphosis twice. The power he carries now is immense, yet none of it has led him to her. He says with firm resolve that she must be in Hainan. He closes his fingers around a small pendant and whispers her name into the dark. Memory comes unbidden. He jerks from his chair, slamming his clenched fist on the table while demanding to know why she went. Her voice breaks on the question as she explains that her father has decided to personally attend a negotiation, and if she, his daughter, attends alongside him, the other party will surely understand his intentions. He warns her plainly that it may be a trap. She tells them she wants to trust her father even if just this once, and asks to be allowed to go. After contemplating for a while, he reluctantly agrees to let her go, but if anything seems off, she is not to hesitate. She is to turn around and come back immediately. She agrees brightly. Before she leaves, she retrieves an item from her robe, a necklace, a keepsake from her late mother. She tells him the necklace has the power to return to the person who gave it. She tells him that the necklace will lead her back to him and promises to will never leave his side. The memory dissolves. Only darkness remains, and in it, a single quiet admission. He should have stopped her at all costs back then. A deep sound rolls across the water. Seol Mudok opens his eyes and hears shouting that a storm is coming. Sailors scramble across the deck, shouting at one another to hold on and to lash themselves to the ropes. The rain arrives in sheets and the mast groans under the wind's pressure. He emerges from his cabin and observing the situation. He says it is a sudden storm. Just then something catches his attention and he turns swiftly. A massive wave was approaching and it threatened to destroy their ship. He moves instantly, chi surging through his limbs. He shouts the technique, protective chi, and then 1,000-pound hammer light blooms around him. The power erupts downward and the sea splits apart in two columns of white and blue seawater. He stands at the epicenter of swirling water and crackling energy, utterly still, his coat trailing in the gale. But the waves keep coming. Sailors slam into the deck badly hurt. Some are flung overboard. A child is held by another woman as she screams for her mother. He watches it and thinks to himself that at this rate, things could end up really bad. He raises a hand and uses the skilled telekinetic grasp. Invisible force lashes out in a wide arc. Beams of light shoot across the water in crossing angles, each one redirecting a wave or a falling figure. One sailor lands hard on the planks and stays there, gasping. He looks at what remains and thinks to start with this. Someone screams that it is coming again. Another wave towers above the ship. The sailors grip whatever they can and try to hold on for their lives. The ship cannot take much more. He knows it and says there is only one option left. His eyes go white. What do they say about characters with eyes again? Anyway, he lets out a long, rising cry as the energy builds inside him as he draws his sword, a deep, vibrating hum that seems to hollow out the air. The temperature drops. The sailors stagger, covering their faces with their arms, asking each other why it is so cold. Their words dissolve into shivers. He must freeze the waves. His sword is now fully white and emits a chilling frost energy. The technique freezing ice wind, cold expands outward from him in every direction. Just as the technique is about to leave his hands in a burst of glacial light, something else happens. The necklace, it pulses. He has only a moment to register the glow before it surges into a column of warm gold light shoots upward from his chest, blazing against the dark storm sky. He grits his teeth against the force of it. Then a shockwave of energy rolls outward. He covers his face as the energy pulls him towards the light, and with a loud sound, the light column disappears. One of the ship's officers stares at the calm water with wide, disbelieving eyes and breathes that it is impossible. The ship drifts in the sudden quiet. Scattered light moves across the hull still covered in sea water, and someone asks, in a shaking voice, what on earth just happened? He opens his eyes. A soft grunt. He gets up slowly and wonders where he is. He shifts, squinting at close wooden walls, the faint creak of wheels. He notices it's cramped and questions if he is in a carriage. He presses a hand to his temple and tries to work through it. He was fighting a storm in the middle of the sea, and when he opened his eyes, he was already here. A scream reaches him from outside the carriage. He gets on his feet in an instant, looks through the carriage curtain and scanning the road ahead. The path leads through open forest, bright afternoon light filtering between trees, and in that light he could see enormous flies. They are the size of dogs, matte black, with bulging red eyes and long jointed legs, swarming a merchant caravan by the look of them. A young woman pinned on the ground, the others scattered or cowering. A young woman and a little girl are trapped in one corner, horrified at the sight of the flies tearing through people. One of the merchants with glasses on calls out to them. Another younger boy says they're the girls and rush forward. Just then, a burst of cold energy destroys one of the carriages, slashing and killing two giant flies in the process. The two men turn and look with confusion. A balding older man exclaims with shock that it was the first-class carriage that just exploded. From the rubble, a finger is seen pointing upwards. Seol Mudok stands in the thick of it, his aura sold as frost, raging and parting the dust. He says the area seems like a forest somewhere in the central plains. He finally notices the people around. He observes that they are foreigners and concludes that he is quite far from the central plains. Then he also notices the giant flies darting towards him and exclaims in horror at their sheer size. Looking at them flying in the sky, he wonders what in the world was happening in the central plains. He dodges the fly that swooped to attack him with a light movement of the head, and without looking back activates the skill, Divine White Ice Palm. The fly that just attacked is frozen solid and shatters behind him. Bro is just farming aura at this point. He says in a menacing tone that these things are just flies, and just because they've grown a little bigger, they dare attack human. He says such an act is unforgivable. He jumps from where he stood and with great speed lunges at the flies in the sky. One, then three, then half a dozen, each impact producing a sharp ringing crack. Each fly he touches turns into a giant ice sculpture. He lands gracefully on one foot and activates the skill Divine White Ice Palm. The frozen flies shatter apart in cascading bursts of ice and blue-white ice fragments. He lowers his hands and straightens his collar. He thinks that this is more than enough for some pathetic bugs. The balding man and the younger boy gasp in shock at what they had just seen. The little girl say through a shocked expression that it was impossible. He makes a small, dismissive sound. Then he hears movement behind him. The balding man and the younger boy approach, and the balding man begins speaking in a language he does not recognize. The balding man bows in gratitude and continues speaking. He has a puzzled expression, and although he could not tell what they said, he could make out that they were thanking him. He says doesn't understand foreign languages, and asks if there is anyone present who can speak the language of the Central Plain. Everyone looks at each other confused. He thinks to himself that no one seems to have understood. He asks again if no one really understands the language of the Central Plains, but is met with further silence. He thinks to himself how he should explain it when the merchants produce a ring and hands it over to the balding man. As he wonders what they want to do with it, the balding man activates a skill, interpret language. His weird pose catches Seol Mudok off guard, and he wonders what is going on. He clears his throat and asks, slowly and carefully, if Seol Mudok can understand him now. Seol Mudok replies with surprise that the balding man can suddenly speak Central Plains language and fluently, and asks if it is the power of the ring. The merchant's eyes go wide, and he says it is the language of the Central Plains. He then introduces himself again. He is Edmund Roll, leader of the Roll Merchant Association, and he is deeply grateful for the rescue. He asks for the name of their savior and calls him a magic swordsman. Seol Mudok replies that he does not know what a magic swordsman is, but his name is Seol Mudok. Edmund blinks in shock and asks if Seol Mudok really doesn't know what a magic swordsman is. Edmund gestures to him and explains that a magic swordsman is someone who uses both a sword and magic, just like him. Seol tilts his head and asks what magic is. Edmund stares at him even more surprised. He wonders to himself that Seol just shot ice at them, right in front of everyone, and he does not know what magic is. He questions where on earth Seol is from. Seeing Edmund lost in thought, Seol tries to draw his attention. As Edmund doesn't respond, Seol grows impatient, and with his cold energy flaring at his fingertips and asks for an answer quickly. Edmund is snapped back to reality in fright and comments to himself that this person is definitely crazy, but then reasons that since the stranger says he does not know, he might as well just explain it, because who knows what will happen if this lunatic goes on a rampage out here. Edmund throws his hands up and tells Seol he understands. He will explain, and he should calm down. Evening, firelight. The trees are still and orange-lit. Seol sits across from Edmund, listening as Edmund explains things to him. Seol absorbs this slowly and says that there is something called magic in this part of the Central Plains. The world is indeed vast. Edmund, quietly, thinks to himself with relief that he has finally calmed the man down. Then Edmund asks, by the way, what exactly Seol means when he says the Central Plains. Seol looks at him puzzled. He asks what Edmund means and if he does not know where he is right now. Edmund is also confused and asks Seol what he means. Seol tells him that it is absurd to not know the Central Plains, while being in the Central Plains itself. Edmund leans forward and says that this is not the Central Plains, and that they are in a forest on the road leading to Barhan, capital of the Drake Kingdom. Seol tells him to listen carefully, and that he has never heard of anyone referring to the Central Plains as Drake, questioning if he has gone senile. Edmund's eye twitches, cursing at Seol Mudok for calling him senile. He says aloud he is only 50, and frankly he is the one who is worried, since Seol keeps insisting this is the Central Plains after having just been rescued. Seol, fed up with Edmund's nonsense, says it's fine, and suggests they ask the kid who has been peeking at them from behind a tree. A young man steps out from the shadows, startled. Edmund recognizes him as Leo and asks what he is doing here. The boy says nothing. Seol looks at him directly and asks him to answer honestly if this is the Central Plains or Drake. The boy struggles to understand his words. Edmund explains that Leo cannot understand his words and proposes to give the ring to Seol. He explains that to use the ring, all he has to do is put it on and shout interpret language. He laments at how much of a waste it is to lend such an expensive magic artifact with language interpretation function to such a crazy guy. He does so regardless, not wanting to be treated like a senile old man. Seol hesitates, but takes the ring from the old man. He puts it on, shouts the activation word, then warm rune lights spiral through the air and settle over him. His eyes open wide in shock at the scene before him. He then looks at some men talking and he can understand their words. He marvels quietly at the sorcery. He looks at the boy again and asks what his name is. The boy replies that his name is Leo. Seol proceeds to ask Leo whether this place is the Central Plains or Drake. Leo, genuinely confused, tells him it is a forest on the path leading to Barhan, the capital of the Drake Kingdom, and asks what exactly the Central Plains is. Seol asks sharply with disbelief if the child too had gone senile. He then asks whether Edmund told the child to say that. Edmund refutes this, saying if Seol is suspicious, He can ask every member of the merchant association. Seol watches the boy's face and tells from his reaction that the boy does not appear to be lying. He finally considers the fact that this really may not be the central plane. The realization dawns on him at once. He was fighting a storm on the ship in the middle of the sea, and when he opened his eyes he was already inside a carriage. He questions if he possibly has teleported. He springs to his feet in shock at the thought of having moved through space. He mutters to himself that this is the Drake Kingdom, and not the central plains. Just then he feels a sharp compression in his chest. Something convulses in his dantian. He falls back to his seat and wonders what that strange feeling was. Edmund, unaware of what just happened, asks if Seol believes him now. Seol, now oblivious to his surroundings, continues to observe himself and notices that the energy is different from anything he's experienced before. He thinks something isn't right and decides to check it out himself. He moves swiftly. Edmund calls out and asks where he is going. He keeps moving and pointing out to himself that this place is indeed different from the central plains, and that the energy is much purer. He jumps into the cold night sky and hovers mid-air observing the area. He curls up, gathering power as energy waves fluctuate around him. Then as the sensation hits him, he lets it out with a shout. He opens his eyes wide in shock as the amount of chi in his dantian had doubled. Puzzled, he queries how he ended up here instead of the central plains. Wind moves through him as he cycles down. With resolve, he says he needs to find Hwayeon as soon as possible. Something catches his eye. He stares at the necklace hanging on his chest and wonders if it was because of the light it emitted back then. Could it be because of the light emitted by this necklace earlier? Hwayeon remembered that Hwayeon had told him that the necklace has the power to return to the person who gave it. So if he has been sent here, it must be to look for her. He laughs at the realization and admits she must be here. Back at the camp, Edmund sits with some worry and is asked by a companion where the Seol had gone. He replies that who would in that Seol is completely unpredictable. Just then, Seol Mudok arrives and clears his throat loudly to draw their attention. He says everyone is here and that he had some business to attend to, so he left for a moment. Then he tells Edmund that he also has a question. Edmund positively, but can't help questioning to himself why Seol is suddenly smiling so creepily. Seol Mudok asks if what Leo said about this place being the Drake Kingdom true. Edmund confirms that it's true, and if they go a bit further, they will reach the capital city of this kingdom, Barhan. Seol Mudok asks where Barhan is. A little boy beside Edmund laughs and says he really doesn't know anything about this place, does he, and that he must have spent all his time training in the mountain. He walks towards Seol Mudok and continues, saying that he has heard stories about eccentric people like him, but it's the first time he's seeing one in person. Seol Mudok doesn't correct him and says that is right. He has been training in the mountains and has only just come out today to experience the world. He adds that this is why he doesn't know anything. He thinks quietly that Barhan and Drake Kingdom are places he has never heard of before. Perhaps he can find out more from this kid. He observes that some of them have different colored eyes and concludes this must be a land of the Western barbarians he has only heard about. The little boy says he was right then and asks whether he could teach him a few things. Sir Magic Swordsman. Seol Mudok says he would appreciate that. The boy grins and tells Seol Mudok to follow him, which he agrees to. Seol Mudok asks the boy what his name is, to which he replies that his name is Luffy, and asks Seol Mudok what his name is as well. Edmund, watching from across the fire, thinks to himself that the man is suddenly acting extremely friendly and that it is honestly a little creepy. He shakes his head. He is really unpredictable, he decides. That night by lantern light, a map is spread on a flat surface. The magic swordsman studies it while Luffy talks, and he begins to learn about this place and about the language the people here use. As unbelievable as it is, he admits with shock that this place is not a foreign land but an entirely different world. The land is oddly shaped, and the writing differs from that of the central plains. In this world, he learns, there are other species besides humans, elves, and dwarves. There are similar beings called beastmen. Of all the species, the strongest are the creatures known as dragons, enormous winged lizards or something close to it. Then there is something called warp magic and magic circles. He wonders if that was what he passed through. Luffy explains that warp magic can be used by fifth circle mages and above. They draw a round magic circle on the ground and chant a spell. Then one can instantly travel to wherever one wishes. The better one's ability, the further one can warp. Seol Mudok thinks that there are inexplicable sorceries here as well, wondering what other amazing things this world could hold. He looks up and is taken aback. There are 3 moons in the sky. With a shaken expression, he admits this place is completely different from anywhere in the central plains. He reaches up and takes the necklace in his fingers again. He questions internally if Hwayeon really summoned him here. Just then the spectacled merchant screams loudly for Savannah not to do it. The shout draws the attention of Seol Mudok. He traces the source of the sound to be from within the bushes. A young woman with wild blonde hair, blue eyes burning, screams back at them, asking what they mean. No. She holds a little girl in a hostage position and threatens with a knife that no one should come any closer or she will kill them all. One of the men across from her reaches out with his hand and pleads for Savannah to calm down and not do this. Seol Mudok, seeing the scene unfolding before him, wonders what is going on. The spectacled man, trying to de-escalate the situation, walks forward and tells her that when they reach the capital, there will definitely be healers who can help both of them. He will even ask Edmund for a favor and says Annie is scared. Savannah doesn't give in. She turns her burning eyes on Charles and demands to know if he thinks she is a fool. She analyzes that even in the capital, healers are rare, and if he finds one, does he know how much money it costs? She raises her voice to another level as she tells him that the assassin bug's egg is lodged in her heart and can hatch into a larva at any moment. She asks how anyone can heal that. When the egg hatches into a larva, she says, it will tear Annie and her apart. She tightens her grip on Annie, the fear very evident on her face. Charles stammers in place, unable to refute her. Her voice drops, and she says in resignation that it would be better for her to die before then, while she is still in one piece. At this moment, Seol Mudok steps forward and asks her to wait. He says he has a rough idea of the situation. He stretches his palm forward, emitting a cold aura. He snatches the blade from Savannah with his telekinetic grasp. Savannah is puzzled at how he took the blade from her. Seol Mudok tells her to sit quickly, that the treatment must be done immediately. Edmund steps forward and asks if Seol Mudok knows any healing magic, to which he replies that he does not, and only knows a few healing techniques from where he is from. He tells them to calm down for now, but this doesn't stop the men from being excited. Edmund steps in and grabs Seol Mudok by the arm, asking him to please save these children. He says he doesn't have much to give him, but that he will repay him with all his heart. Seol Mudok tells him he was going to do the treatment, even without being asked. He turns and announces he will begin now, and asks everyone to step back a little. Edmund replies positively and tells the rest to move back. He walks behind the girls, who are now sitting on the floor, and tells them there is no need to be tense. It won't take long. They both reply positively with uncertain expressions. He instructs them to close their eyes and relax. Both of them flinch as he injects his energy into Thor's bodies. He focuses and queries to himself if the bug's eggs are near their hearts. He continues channeling his energy and opens his eyes as he finds the eggs near the hearts of the two girls. The buzzing fills the night air as the men watch in amazement and worry. Seol Mudok observes that it is fortunate that the egg hasn't hatched, and now he just needs to control his energy to burn the egg without harming the heart. He pours more energy into the bodies of the two girls and channels it to turn the eggs away. He nods in satisfaction to himself and retracts his hands, while the girls let out a breath of turbid air. He tells them it's done, and the girls can't believe their ears. Seol Mudok tells them he has destroyed all the bug eggs, and that they can rest easy now. Edmund exhales. He asks whether Anne and Savannah are truly all right. He asks whether it is really over. Seol Mudok tells them that there will be no side effects, and they need not worry. The girls step forward trembling and thank him, Savannah calling him their savior. They all bow in unison, showing their deep gratitude. He accepts it all and turns away with a smirk on his face. The night is quiet now. He sits alone on a rise of dark earth beneath an open sky, one knee drawn up, his back against a tree and his white hair catching the faint wind. Looking to the sky, he sighs that it has been a long day. He holds the pendant again and thinks he misses Hwayeon even more today. Wind sweeps through the trees in a long, rushing breath. 3 moons hang overhead, cold and alien and beautiful. He watches them and hopes they can meet again soon. Morning comes loud and green. The road to the capital cuts through dense forest, and the caravan moves along it in a rustling, sweat-soaked column. Edmund, looking exhausted and sweaty, asks why the weather is so brutal. Seol Mudok agrees with him that it is indeed scorching, his tone flat, almost to himself. Luffy offers to give him some of his water, to which Seol Mudok thanks him. He holds the bottle. The water inside is lukewarm. Luffy beside him doesn't hesitate and begins gulping his water sack. Seol Mudok thinks about it for a moment, and then, quietly, he releases a thread of cold energy into the container. Luffy, done drinking his water, comments that it is very hot today and asks if he is all right. Seol Mudok tells him it is at least better than before and hands the bottle back. Luffy says there is a strange sound coming from the bottle and recoils from the shock of the bottle pressing against his face being cold. Seol Mudok tells him to take it. Luffy gasps, still shocked, and asks why the water is so cold. Seol Mudok chuckles and tells him to try it. Luffy gulps down the water and notices there's ice in it. He takes the pouch away from his mouth with a splash, exuberant and childlike, as Luffy splashes his own face with the chilled water, laughing. Seol Mudok smiles and tells him it is refreshing, isn't it? Luffy calls out to Seol Mudok with a grim expression. Then he suddenly asks, with sparkles around him, if Seol Mudok would please freeze his water bottle too. He's taken aback, but considers how the child has been a big help to him on the journey and he can do this much at least. He agrees and stretches his palm forward, releasing cold energy to freeze the bottle. He tells Luffy that it is done. Luffy lets out a cheerful sound at the prospects of being able to drink cold water. Seol Mudok notices something and has an "are you kidding me" look on his face. Apparently everyone has come to have their water frozen. He asks as though unaware of their intentions. They all stretch their pouches to him and ask for him to do the same for them. Dozens of people stand with water bottles raised, staring at him hopefully with sparkling eyes. He stares back. He thinks that while it is not difficult if he grants every request, it might lead to more hassle. Just then a hand taps a man from behind and asks what's going on. They turn and see that it is Edmund. He asks again what was happening and for someone to explain. Luffy, not hiding his excitement, explains the Seol Mudok had made him some ice water, and the others seeing it too wanted some for themselves. Edmund looks with a grim and sweaty expression as he calls Seol Mudok. Seol Mudok looks seriously and asks what the matter is. Immediately, Edmund gets on one knee, holding his pouch, like though he wanted to propose, asking for some ice water too. Everyone around is stunned, and Seol Mudok even more so. Seol Mudok sighs and asks for the pouch in resignation. Edmund does that with excitement. He tells himself while freezing the pouch that he should stay with the caravan and learn more about this place. He acknowledges that he has solved the biggest problem, the language barrier, and so giving them some ice water would be ideal. Edmund repeatedly tells him thank you as he chugs the water down. He suddenly stops and says it is strange, with dark eyes as if in profound thought. He asks how Seol Mudok made the ice. Seol Mudok replies with his arms crossed if something was wrong with it. Edmund narrows his eyes and says it is absolutely perfect. His face transforms entirely, eyes wide, cheeks flushed, the look of a man confronting a marvel. He announces that he has tried all the ice available on the continent, but he has never tasted ice like this. He says it is truly on another level and simply incomparable to the ice he has had before he praises Seol Mudok as being amazing. Seol Mudok, confused, asks how the ice is tasty and that he merely froze the water, yet Edmund claims it tastes different. He asks what he means by that. Edmund explains that when creating ice, it is common to use the cold attribute of mana in the area or to gather moisture from the atmosphere. During this process, impurities from the mana get mixed into the ice, which affects its taste. However, since each mage has a unique mana signature, it is rare to find someone who can create pure ice. It is not easy to obtain pure ice. Seol Mudok absorbs this explanation, and he says he now understands. He glances at the crowd still gathered behind Edmund and thinks that this is why they all reacted so enthusiastically, and begins to think that there is something almost pitiable about it. Seol Mudok's face lights up again. He tells himself that since he is in a good mood, he will make some more ice right now, cold energy gathering in his palm. Edmund calls to him, putting an arm out. Seol Mudok is puzzled by this and asks what it is. Edmund raises one finger. Standing in a coquettish manner, he tells him he has a proposal for him.